Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Good morning, I'm Sunnyvale Mayor Larry Klein. Welcome to the 36th installment of my weekly virtual office hours. It was my birthday earlier this week, so we actually headed to Russian River in Sonoma for a little change of scenery while sheltering in place. This is the first time I've really gotten out of the county, Santa Clara County, since all this began so long ago. People continue to say that they really appreciate these weekly live stream addresses and hearing from their mayor. So I'll continue this until the end of the shelter in place and probably a lot longer. This Facebook Live event is really great because it allows me to give you some updates, answer some of your questions, and of course provide some words of encouragement. So thank you for allowing me to continue to represent you and work for Sunnyvale during these ever-changing and challenging times. I hope everyone's staying healthy. Please remember to take care of yourself, both physically and mentally. These are difficult times for so many of us. Keep following the county health orders. You know, we are now in the purple tier, and that's not what we thought a week ago was going to happen, but it's important that everybody do whatever you can to stop the spread of the virus by washing your hands, don't touching your face, reduce the number of people you come in contact with, and of course maintain safe social distancing when you're out. And of course, as always, wear your mask. It helps, it's mandatory. As I said before, if you need a face covering, please contact me. And of course, the other thing is please get your flu shot. This is the concept of a mixture of the twindemic with the issues of the standard flu season that we're entering right now, as well as COVID-19, which is not just still around, but it's actually surging. So we've had, a surge of COVID-19 cases in the last few weeks. You remember you could be a carrier of the virus and not have any symptoms. Conceivably, anyone you meet might also be asymptomatic. So do what you can to protect yourself and protect those around you. We're now 249 days after the March 16th county health order started all this, and in an attempt to slow the spread of COVID-19. And we're just passing 8 months. So 3/4 of a year, or 2/3 of a year is already passed. And as we said, last week, it's a lot has happened, since this first declaration, and a lot happens every day. I have daily press conferences, even on my remote work weekend away, press conferences to watch, conference calls to confer and advocate on your behalf. So let's go ahead and get started and talk about a little bit what's happened at the federal, state, county, and city level over the last week. So on last Monday and Tuesday, Governor Newsom and Dr. Gowley had a press conference and said that cases were trending up, and they moved several counties, 11 counties, to a more restrictive tier. And from that standpoint, they said it was a big concern, and so that was about a week and a half ago. And so we'll talk a little bit more about all the things that have happened this week. And then last Tuesday, the county health department had a press conference, and they basically said because of the surge in positive cases that and people not following the safety protocols, that we need to continue to fight and do whatever we can to prevent the spread. They gave the scccovidconcerns.org helpline. So if you're seeing people that aren't following, or businesses that aren't following the standard social protocols, this is something that you can do to have county health come out and look at their guidelines and making sure that restaurants are following what they say they need to do. There's also an advice line at 866-870-7725. And from that standpoint, there were a lot of surges that in COVID-19 cases that we're talking about last week, mainly in ages from 18 to 24. And most of those cases were in East San Jose or Gilroy, but there's definitely a lot of fatigue. And from a holiday standpoint, they put forth the directions as far as Thanksgiving and Christmas. Gather outdoors if possible, and only do the immediate family. So that's the critical thing. If you're going to have two families come together, which is not suggested, but if you're going to do it for a very short period outdoors. I know that there are certain family members that people will be extending their bubble to family that are out of their area. It's not the best thing. We actually, from a personal standpoint, canceled all the family that we normally have come from out of the area for the last, almost every year for the last 15 years, coming to have Thanksgiving at our house. And a lot of times that's extended family, that's friends coming over, they're in town. This year we canceled all that, and it's just, my wife and I having Thanksgiving at home. So we are going to do some Zoom meetings and see some friends from outside of the area, but whatever you can do, stop the spread of the virus. And then last Tuesday, Santa Clara County supervisors met, and they extended the eviction moratorium for small businesses to March 31st. So businesses now have up to 6 months after that moratorium ends to pay back at least 50% of the past due rent, and then a year to pay the additional 50%, or the full amount of what's owed during shelter in place. And then last Tuesday evening, council met, and we had several things. We had a budget update. So we finally had our budget update after several last Tuesday, after several meetings where we moved that budget update past because we went past 1 a.m. We finally had our budget update, which was a big thing. We approved. So we got updates, and in general, we're in a fairly good state. We were very conservative for our estimates back in June when we approved the budget. We also got a certain amount of CARES Act funding from the state. So $1.9 million of that. So we approved the receiving of that, and we'll figure out, in the next month or so where to apply those funds. And then we also approved the art master plan. So that was the master plan for public art. The biggest thing that was a portion of that was, for one thing, we hadn't had a good art master plan to talk about, possible things like we might do, like a new art gallery, which we used to have until the downturn in 05, 06, where we ended up closing that and utilizing that for storage and other things. So that's one of the things that have been talked about. But from a funding standpoint, we immediately funded the concept of a utility art box program. So from that standpoint, it looks like we'll be, defining what that program is over the next 6 months, but getting the art club, getting, local students, local neighborhoods together to beautify their neighborhoods, to add art throughout the city. And the other thing we did was increase the art requirement for retail, for office space. And it also for public buildings, that the art requirement moved from 1% to 2%. And we also gave the developers an in lieu fee option to do up to 1.1% as far as that's concerned. So ultimately, what that means is, if in most developers spent more than like 2% on the art that's in a lot of the office space, but if they don't want to deal with that, if they don't use that full 2%, whatever's remaining can come to the city to help fund different art projects throughout the city. Or if they don't want to put art on their site at all, they can go through it with the in lieu option of 1.1%. So that's positive from our standpoint. And then this week, Governor Newsom had a press conference, and Dr. Galley was there, and ultimately it was putting the brakes on. So, they moved multiple counties into the purple tier. So ultimately, making 41 counties currently in the purple tier. That's about 94% of the state. And, they understand this will have a big impact on the businesses, but starting Tuesday, November 17th, that included closing all indoor dining. So from a Santa Clara standpoint, we were already doing that, but closing of all indoor activities related to gyms, museums, zoos, aquariums, places of worship, movie theaters. So yeah, our AMC had to close on Tuesday. They were going to be, so a week ago we thought we were going to be moving from the orange tier to the red tier because of the large number of COVID-19 cases within the state. The governor decided that, with the recommendations from the health personnel around the state, that we need to put the brakes on in a much bigger way. So closing indoor dining, closing indoor activities, museums, zoos, aquariums, shopping malls, and retail establishments are now reduced to a maximum of 25% capacity. And, from that standpoint, it was very drastic, but looking at the number of cases throughout the state over the last 2 weeks, and looking at that rapid surge, that was, to me, was a big thing that could be done. And we'll talk about what was done yesterday to make that even stronger. And then, but on Tuesday, from that standpoint, we'd already been planning a certain amount of restrictions that pushed us from the red tier into the purple tier from the county. From that standpoint, every county in the Bay Area, -2, is now in the purple tier. So San Mateo and San Francisco County, or San Francisco County and I think San Mateo are still in the red tier. But San Francisco last week had already closed indoor dining on last Friday, so they had already seen that coming, and so from that standpoint, did whatever they could to stop the spread of the virus within their county. And then on Tuesday, there was Santa Clara Board of Supervisors met, and one of the things that they did was unanimously approve $500,000 for Sunnyvale's Magical Bridge. So they did original funding back at the beginning of this year. They'd actually initially had thought they were going to put in more money. They ended up deciding not to put in as much money that they had set aside for all access playgrounds. And so, there was additional fundraising, and the city put in more funding. But as they're looking at the end of this year, and what that fund currently has, Supervisor Cortese in his office basically put forth a proposition to utilize another $500,000. So that was approved from the county standpoint, which is really fantastic. So that means that some of the features that we were looking at for the Fair Oaks Magical Bridge Playground can now be added, or so they figured out, based upon the amount of funding that was there from a state or from the county, from the city, and of course from voluntary donations from other people, they had set up the appropriate size and number of features for that playground. They now have an extra $500,000 to work with. So that's really good from that standpoint, that we can see that playground be even better than what was originally envisioned. And then this week on Tuesday, several things were on the agenda. First up, we had our special order of the day for Small Business Saturday. So that is the Saturday after Thanksgiving, and that's just suggesting that everybody shop local. It started with Amex about 8 years ago, and has been a success ever since. We had Don Mayer from the Sunnyvale Chamber, Mike Johnson from the Sunnyvale Downtown Association, just reminding join the meeting to remind people to shop local. Sunnyvale has a lot of independent stores, and do what you can to support them, and just whether or not that's Lee's Books, Bookosaurus. There's lots of independent retail as far as clothing, shoes, and then the other concept is just to buy gift cards from our local restaurants. Whatever you can do to help them during these difficult times, it really helps, and all that it makes a difference. It's better for the city. We get more sales tax, and it's immediate support for all these family-run businesses that really need your support during these difficult times. Another thing we did on Tuesday was authorize the city manager to sign the agreement with VTA for a Peary Park Rides shuttle program. And so this was started envisioned about 4 years ago. It was a partnership with VTA. And with that partnership, we were awarded $1.1 million from the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, MTC, to create the Peary Park Rides program. So it was mainly to focus on getting employees from the Caltrain station into Peary Park during the rush hours, during the morning, during the afternoon. But it was also to be an on-call shuttle service for residents in the area between 101, El Camino, Mary, and Fair Oaks. So that was kind of a trial program. It's one step towards a city shuttle, and someday that might be, depending upon funding sources, that I think that will be a very good thing to get people out of their cars, to get people to work, or a Caltrain within the city. Another thing we did was on Tuesday, we approved 2 office buildings on Ross Drive. So this is Ross Drive is the triangle where 101, 237, and Matilda meet. It's that triangle where right now that's actually where the Hamlin cold weather shelter is placed, and now that's of course an all year-round shelter. But it was one of the last, so right there at the corner where those, especially where 101 and 237 meet, It was creating, 2 office buildings and a parking structure, and it's pretty iconic because what it did was also it allowed a certain amount of office to go into an area that's not really that well used right now. It saved lots of trees and added, saved a lot of the redwood trees. It added a whole bunch of trees. So that's a positive sort of thing from that standpoint. And then the last thing that we did was we also considered a 3-month trial program to stream council meetings on Facebook Live. And so, I was really, for that before the meeting. And, I thought, these Facebook Live events have been very positive for getting the word out from a council standpoint or from what's happening in a city standpoint. The concept of streaming that meetings, and there's a few cities that do it with mixed success. Several have done it. San Jose used to do it and then decided not to do it. And so city staff basically gave their concept and their social media strategy on why Facebook Live stream wasn't a good idea for council meetings. And ultimately, the majority of council members voted against it. I do think that Facebook live streams are very useful in certain cases, but when you go into a 4, 5, or 6 hour meeting, there's very few people that will actually be able to will sit through that, especially as a Facebook Live event. And then conceivably, it's not indexed like Granicus currently is. So in the current system, you can go to the city website, and what you can do is actually go to a specific point within a specific agenda item and jump to that. So we still are doing YouTube Live, YouTube streaming, and then of course the KNTV or KMTV local cable channel. They're basically streaming our meetings live, so you can still see it from that standpoint. And then of course yesterday, out of the blue, Dr. Geely had a press conference, and there was a release that the state announced that as of Saturday there will be a curfew for a majority of the Californians starting Saturday at 10 p.m. and then that will go until Monday, December 21st at 5 a.m. So starting Saturday for all the counties in the purple tier, like Santa Clara County, people are asked to avoid gathering with other households after 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. Restaurants must close outdoor dining at 10 p.m. with the exception of takeout and delivery. Grocery stores and other essential businesses can remain open, but this is mainly to prevent parties and discourage celebratory gatherings that normally happen this time of year. Essential workers can still go out, but citizens should remain home to stop the spread. And this kind of goes for everyone, just to see the number of cases. We had a curfew at the very beginning of this, which set California on a good path compared to a lot of the states out there. We did see a surge around July 4th, and this is pretty much to prevent a continued surge during the holidays. So, that's, I was shocked to see that not only did they, put the brakes on in a big way at the beginning of the week, but from a state standpoint, they also decided to do a limited curfew, and it's doesn't have a lot of teeth, but it really reminds people, and this is what they shouldn't do. In not having parties, I think, is a big portion of that. There have been a few reports that some of the parties that happened during Halloween are some of the causes of what the surge that we've seen in the last week. There's not one specific thing, but parties are a common way that a lot of people have been exposed. And then it's just, and definitely there's a certain amount of fatigue, people wanting to meet with families, meet with friends outside of their normal social bubble. And so, all that together is part of the reason why we're seeing the surge right now. So let's go ahead and talk about what's upcoming. Some new events, some upcoming events, as well as just uh, holidays that are coming up. So of course, next Thursday is Thanksgiving. So please do what you can to stay safe. If you're going to have a safe social gathering, have it outdoors. Limit that to less than 2 hours. Do what you can to stop the spread. We understand, that certain people want to see their relatives. Whatever you can do, try to be safe. Wear your mask. Do everything outdoors as much as possible if you're going to do that. And as far as Thanksgiving, if you are looking to buy a pie, and I know a lot of you will be celebrating in that way, Our Daily Bread has partnered with Whole Foods that $5 for every pie sold between November 23rd and November 25th, so that's Thanksgiving Eve, will go to Our Daily Bread. And Our Daily Bread is fantastic. It received the Mayor's Award of Excellence for the state of the city this year. I thought that was a fantastic organization that's been active in our city for more than 35 years, providing lunch Monday, Wednesday, and Friday to anyone who wants it. So, especially during these difficult times, there's been a lot of people that have been utilizing their free lunches. So definitely, whatever you can do, and you can donate to them directly. But if you're thinking about buying a pie, definitely go to Sunnyvale Whole Foods and making sure that supports them. That's one thing that's really helpful. And of course, the Thanksgiving, the Saturday after Thanksgiving is Small Business Saturday. So shop local, support your local businesses. Provide the small families, the small businesses, whatever support you can. I know a lot of people have been ordering online, but whatever you can do to support these family-run businesses is only better for them. And it also provides the city much needed sales tax. So please do that. Other upcoming things are the Lakewood Branch Library. So City Council is scheduled to consider that item on December 8th. And so this is the conceptual plan. So you can find that online. There were several meetings earlier this week to present the conceptual plan to the school boards, the Sunnyvale School District, and then the Fremont Union High School District school boards. So those meetings went fairly well, but it's basically it's then when council sees it on the 8th, we'll do a final design development and then the final bid for construction documents. So it's very positive from that standpoint. Other things that are coming up are Moffett Park outreach meetings. And so this is 3 virtual meetings, community workshops that will be slightly different than what we normally do. It'll be 2 hours of community engagement, immediately followed by a city council study session. And so these topics are varied. In the first one will be on sea level rise and urban ecology. And so that will be on November 30th from 4 to 7 p.m. So the first 2 hours, 4 to 6, will be the general feedback from the residents, and then the city council study session giving a certain amount of direction to city staff after that. On December 10th, then there will be a meeting from 4 to 7 p.m. on transportation and infrastructure regarding Moffett Park. And then finally on February 1st from 4 to 7 p.m. on land use, housing, and open space. So if you want to learn more, you can go to the Moffett Park Specific Plan website at Moffett Park, so www.moffett, Moffett, Park, PARKSP.com. So that's Moffett Park Specific Plan.com. And you can learn more. You can see, all the notices of of what the upcoming meetings are and additional information that's being provided by the city. So let's go ahead and get to the health dashboard and what's happening on testing and monitoring. So from a state standpoint, a week ago we passed 1 million cases, and we're already to about 1.8 million cases. No, sorry, 1.08 million cases. So about more than 80,000 cases in just a week. And from a death standpoint, we've had over 18,500 deaths. So that the death count is definitely, continues to increase. New cases continue to expand from a state standpoint. From a county standpoint, we're now at 29,631. That's up 2,350 from last week. So that's a big increase over the last few weeks. So this week 2,350. Last week it was 1,600. The weeks before that was 1,000, 1,800. So we've seen what we used to be about 700-800 a week go to 1,000 for every few weeks, up 1,600, now 2,300. So it's definitely showing the surge. We've had 459 deaths in the county. That's increased about 1,900 in the last week. And we currently have about 102 hospitalizations. So that continues to increase also. It's about, about the same, but definitely, or no, it's about 20 more than what we had last week. So hospitalizations increases. From a city standpoint, San Jose is now at 19,615 cases. That's up about 1,550 from last week, and they've seen a similar surge. From a county standpoint, last week they had 1,100 increase. Before that, it was 650 for several weeks. So we've more than doubled, almost tripled the number of countywide cases in the last 2 or 3 weeks. From a Sunnyvale standpoint, we've actually doubled the number of cases also. So for the last few weeks, it's been 50. This week, we doubled the number of cases to about 100 increase from last week. So we're at 1,287. So, it's do what you can to slow the spread. This is really, a difficult time, and I understand people are tired of sheltering in place and and not seeing their friends, not seeing their family. But do what you can. Don't go out. Don't let your guard down at the end of the day. I continue to do a lot of advocating on your behalf. I continue to have even at this remote sheltering in place. Having conference calls with our county supervisors. From a county health level, the pop-up van will be back in Sunnyvale on Monday. So you can go reserve your spot right now. They'll be here Monday the 23rd from 9:30 a.m. to 4 p.m., just like they are every second and fourth Monday. So please go get tested if you haven't been tested. And if you want to get tested, if that time doesn't work for you, definitely just go to sccfreetest.org and you can learn all the locations around the county that are free, that the county pop-up van moves to multiple locations. You can also get tested at the county fairgrounds, where they actually have a large number of flu shots that are available. And I'll be doing a press conference later this morning talking about getting tested, wearing your mask, and all the things that people need to do to do your part to slow the spread. Okay, let's go ahead and get to weekly questions. So people ask, why is voting taking so long? So this is always the case, and I've talked to the county registrar, Shannon Bushy, several times in the last few weeks, and there weren't any issues during election day, but it does take a while to count all the votes. So we, from a county standpoint, we allowed up to 17 days after the election day to receive mail-in ballots, and we've seen a rapid drop off as far as the number of ballots coming in, but we allowed up to 17 days beyond that. So today is that 17 day. So today is the last day for them to receive any mail-in ballots. If there were any delays in the post office delivery, but the majority of ballots have been counted now. So we're now around 99% of the ballots counted. And so, I just want to say first, I want to thank everyone who helped out on my campaign. It is now, it's not been certified by the county registrar yet, but with the number of votes coming in over the last few days, it hasn't changed. So I will be the first directly elected mayor. So I want to thank everyone who donated, who walked precincts, who campaigned with me at the farmers market, or put up lawn signs, walked precincts, or just helped get the word out. Your encouragement and appreciation has been, overwhelming. The vote is almost done, or sorry, the counting of the votes is almost done, and from that standpoint, I am honored to be our first directly elected mayor. To have the job for another 4 years is a little it's a little overwhelming at times, but I just want to thank you. I pledge to continue to listen, to do what I can to continue these dialogues with our residents, to make sure that your voice is heard, to make sure that we're a well-run city. And that one of the things that I wanted to make sure is to point out that whoever was mayor, the position of the mayor doesn't really change. The biggest thing that the mayor does is it's one vote, just like every other council member, but it's being the face of the city. It's as we talk through and work through regional issues, it's also running the council meetings, and so I've had a lot of practice of doing that over the last 2 years, and it's also just making sure that we're set on the right path, and I don't think the role of the mayor hasn't really changed, and so it's working directly with the city manager. It's making sure that that those meetings are well run, and it's making sure that people feel safe. And so it's being counselor in chief for the city. So I always the chief of public safety always jokes that he is the chief of public safety, but I'm the chief counselor for Sunnyvale, to dealing with all the people that are reaching out when there's issues, when there's problems, and trying to be that conduit between the public and city staff and the city manager at times, to make sure that problems are found. At the end of the day, we're a city of 157,000 people, and you are our eyes and ears. If there's issues, it's helping you raise those issues with city staff, showing you where on the city website you can report a cracked sidewalk, a traffic light that's out, or street light that's out. It's all those sorts of things, but making sure that residents feel good about our city and understand what they can do as far as fixing or getting their voice heard at the end of the day. So, I'm happy to be part of our city and be our first directly elected mayor. So let's see. And so from that standpoint, all the votes should finally be counted at the end of the day. And so, that's good. So there are a few close races around the county that they will automatically be doing some recounts, but our race is one of those that is close, but the margins are fairly large. Let's see other questions that I got. Is Sunnyvale safe? So I get this question every now and then. In comparing statistics, and there were several mailers during the campaigns that raised the issue of increases in crime within the city. If you compare Sunnyvale's crime statistics from January to September, or it's January through October of last year, the versus 2020, the property crimes are down about 10%, and violent crimes are down somewhere between 12 and 15%. Sunnyvale is a safe city. We were always in the top 10 as far as safest cities for the last 10 years, and often in the top one or two, depending upon what survey statistics they're looking at. But Sunnyvale is very safe at the end of the day, and not that a crime doesn't occur, but when you start looking at the number of people that live in our city, and the number of and that was one of the things that came out, that the amount of interactions with public safety, it is a very safe city. People do look out after each other. If you want to start a neighborhood watch group, that's one of the things that our city does. There's a lot of members on the CERT team that help out the city during events and as far as preparedness for national disasters, whatever that is. So from that standpoint, definitely we have a safe city. People ask, if they want to get more involved, what can they do? So you can join a board or commission, and today is the last day for our fall board and commission applications. So they're due at 5 p.m. today. So if you want to join a board or commission, and you can go to our website, and if you go to search for board and commissions on sunnyvale.ca.gov, you can find out what board positions are open and join. It's like, and we always keep your applications on file for future applications, for future interview process, for the future interview process. We have that on a quarterly basis. You can always join, and that's always a good thing. It's a great way to give back to the city. One of the things that we had Tuesday night was a study session with the chair and vice chairs of our different boards and commissions, meeting with council to hear some of their issues, how we can be more active, and how we can get more feedback from our boards and commissions. So it's really good. It's really great from that standpoint. I think that is the majority of the questions that I received. Question: where can I report graffiti? So I had a few questions about that. If you go to sunnyvale.ca.gov and see the Access Sunnyvale Access Sunnyvale link at the top of the page, that's where you can go to report a lot of things. Graffiti is one, but if there's street lights that's out or flickering, there's a stoplight that's out, cracked sidewalk, whatever that is, that's where you go to report any traffic issues that you have, any problems within the city that's non-emergency, but it's any basically public park problem that you might find. That's the best place to do that. And I think that's it as far as this week. Looks like not as many people here, and I understand that there's a certain amount of fatigue as far as these meetings are concerned, but a lot of people say that they watch these afterwards. Since there are no questions, I just want to go ahead and wrap up. Thanks for joining me again this week. As always, I'm proud of Sunnyvale's response to this pandemic. I know it continues to be difficult. New issues come up every week, but your response does make a difference. And from that standpoint, the rules change. The curfew this week, additional moving into the purple tier makes things more restrictive. But do what you can to help your neighbors. Help a stranger. Share baked goods. Write positive messages in chalk on your sidewalk, positive messages in your windows. Continue to try to build your community. and help others, especially during these difficult times. I'm proud to see Sunnyvale residents pulling together to help strangers, to help their neighbors. If you're out on a walk, wave, say hello from a safe social distance. People still miss that safe social interaction, but Sunnyvale will emerge from this as a stronger community. We're in this together, and we will get through this together. So thanks for listening. Until next week, stay safe. Of course, wear your mask and have a good Thanksgiving. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you next week. Goodbye.